Hey, Myles here at Tactical Hyve. Welcome to another dry fire session. And in this session, we're now going to talk about the details of the proper pistol grip. So if you're interested, stay tuned. All right, welcome back. In this series, we've covered a lot of topics, a lot of details, and if you're new to this series, I highly recommend you watch the playlist below. Start from the very beginning because a lot of things are going to make more sense if you watch everything, and there are a ton of details. Anyone who's followed the series will know there's been a lot of details that we share, and don't just take it from the topic of the video. A lot of the gems we share are in the middle or somewhere in the video, so you have to really pay attention. Now, we already covered a lot of different things that have utilized the pistol grip, but we never really dove into the details. The reason is there are lots of ways to grip a pistol. There are lots of different techniques, and there's no one way because technique is a matter of style. And just how you dress and I dress is going to be different, but we can accomplish the same goal. Now, the goal, that is kind of like principles. There's techniques versus principles. There are certain principles that the proper pistol grip should fulfill, and that's what we're going to be focusing on. We're going to talk about some of the principles, then talk about some of the techniques. I'll share some of the most common ways people grip the gun, but it doesn't necessarily mean it is the only way. However, the principles are what are extremely important. Now, I'm not going to go into all the details because remember this series, we just want to give you baby steps and we don't want to overwhelm you. So we're just going to focus on the firing hand today and give you an overview of the principles and then once again, some of the techniques that you can implement. All right, so let's talk about the firing hand. When we shoot a gun, what happens with a gun if we were, let's say, in outer space? When the gun goes bang, okay, the bullet's going to travel that way and the gun is going to move straight back if we're in outer space. Why? It's Newton's third law, where every action has an equal and opposite reaction. Now, the gun is also going to flip, not in outer space, but on Earth here. Okay, so we call it makes it go back. But what causes the muzzle flip? We are causing a pivot point here. When the gun moves back, and I'm going to focus here, just go low and exaggerate. If it hits a pivot point, it's going to go up. So we want to combat that as one of the first things, as a purpose of the grip, we want to battle that muzzle rise or that muzzle flip. And so we need to get really high on the beaver tail or the tang of this pistol. And that is going to fulfill the first principle, which is to have good leverage over the gun. Or if you want to take it another way, minimize the leverage the gun has over us when the muzzle is going to rise. So if we have a grip that's really low, what's going to happen is when the recoil happens, it's going to hit that pivot point and there's going to be all this space for the gun to move into. We want to create a backstop that is going to help alleviate most of that movement. So the muzzle rise is not going to be as pronounced. So if we use the web of our hand and come up really high on the beaver tail or the tang here, then there's no space. So when the gun comes up, there's going to be less room for that gun to move into. Now, there's other things that are going to be in play, which we'll talk about later on. But the very first thing here is we haven't even talked about the fingers or anything. We're talking about the web of the hand. Now, you might be wondering how you should position the web of your hand. For the most part, it's going to be right in the middle. Right? If you were to grab your finger, you feel that flesh here, that's kind of where it's going to be. Now, everyone's a little different. The gun you're going to be using is different, our bone structure. So some of you might be a little bit curved into it or curved out. You're going to find the right position for you. But for the most part, most people are kind of right in the middle. The main thing here for this video is you need to get nice and high so that you are going to have good leverage over the gun. Now, that's just the web of the hand. So that is the first principle, leverage. And we can talk about that with the support hand, or we will be talking about that with the support hand as well, but our focus today is the firing hand. The second principle for a good, proper pistol grip is to have good friction over the gun. And to boil this down to a very simple way of explaining it is we want to have contact with the grip with as much of our firing hand as possible. So our fingers are going to wrap over the front strap. The heel of our palm is going to be along the back strap. And depending on the gun you use and your hand, how, like the size of your hand, you want to have some contact with the side of your pistol as well. for the most part. Now, some people might not have that, and I'm not going to dive into the weeds too much into why that may or may not be needed. Okay, just for the most part here, just understand that we want to get as much contact as possible. And if you can't get contact with the side of your gun just because of your hand size or, or the gun size, don't worry too much about it right now. But you are going to get maximum contact with the grip of the gun as much as possible. Okay. So that addresses friction, the second principle. We want to have as much contact with the grip. Now let's talk about some of the techniques. Remember, I mentioned there are principles and then there are techniques that help fulfill the principles. When we're talking about techniques, there are different ways to apply pressure to a pistol grip. I'm going to share the most common one for your firing hand. When people grip their pistol here, we are still talking about or concerned about the gun flipping up like this, right? So high leverage helps on the web of our hand. Now friction, gripping the gun and having good friction helps, but we need to know how to apply pressure with our firing hand. So we're now combining leverage with proper friction, using technique with our pressure with our fingers and kind of in our hand. What is it doing? So what we're going to do here, I'm going to show you, is a common method is to have C-clamp pressure, forward and back. So your fingers are pulling straight to the rear along this back strap, okay, straight to the rear towards you, and the heel of your palm is driving in, okay, ever so slightly. So at the end, you have a C-clamp. The pressure is going down on the front strap and on the back strap, okay, just like this. If you do not put any pressure left and right, then theoretically, the gun should not move to the left or the right. Because if we take the example of outer space again, if this gun goes off, and let's pretend there's a pivot point, but there's no grip on the gun, okay? So let's say there was just like a stick hanging out in space. It's just stationary here. Gun does this, hits this stick, it's going to go up, that's it, okay? And if there was miraculously gravity, it just goes down. So facing you, the gun would just track this way, okay? If you apply left and right pressure, so right now we talked about the C-clamp, this is just forward and back, so still the gun should go up and down. If I apply unnecessary pressure on the right side here, then the gun might veer to one direction. Okay, that is the kind of theoretical. Now, there's ways to cancel it out with your support hand, but remember, we're just focusing on the firing hand. That was kind of getting a little deep into the weeds, so I'm going to bring it back a little bit and make things simpler here. What you want to focus on, though, is when you have high leverage and you have maximum friction, you're wrapping around the gun here, you want to squeeze towards your body or your face, if you have the grip here, with your fingers, and then drive in with the heel of your palm. This is going to help allow you to also manage the muzzle flip. When the gun goes off, if we just had the web of our hand here, it's not going to stop everything. So we need these fingers here to help bring the gun's muzzle back down. So I'm going to just do this so that you can see. So imagine my web of my hand was here. The gun goes up. I need fingers here to help bring the muzzle back down to where it came from. Right? Now you might be asking, okay, so why do you need the heel of your palm? The heel of your palm is needed because if we're pushing or pulling rear on the front strap, we need something to stop the gun from dipping like this. So if our target was right here, the gun goes bang, we want the gun to return right from where it started. So now we need the heel of our palm to stop that pressure. So as it's coming down, I need to stop it here. Because if I didn't have that, it would dip. Okay? So I need that pressure or that backstop here, so now the gun does not dip and returns where it started from. So we want good C-clamp pressure. So for this dry fire session, all you're going to do is you're going to take shots with your strong hand, but the focus is going to be on the two principles that I talked to you about and having good grip pressure forward and back. Remember, there's other ways to grip the gun, but this is probably the most common way. When you're doing your dry fire, you already know good trigger control principles from the previous videos. So what you're going to be focusing on is, first, it might be leverage. Okay, I want to make sure that every rep, my gun, okay, or I should say my grip is high on the beaver tail, and I feel good pressure here. I don't want there to be a lot of cushion here, or a lot of give, I should say. So you're going to do reps. And the whole time, you determine your accuracy by looking at the movement of your front sight or your red dot. Now, after you do a few reps there, focusing on good leverage, now what I want you to do is switch it up and focus on friction and your grip pressure. Do you have as much contact with the pistol grip as much as possible? And do you have forward and back pressure? So now you're going to be focusing on that as you shoot. And what you want to do is you need to try and be aware of the grip pressure before, during your reps, and after. You want to keep the same grip pressure as possible. So you don't want, let's say you have 100% of your grip pressure right now, and then all of a sudden as you're shooting, it now turns to 75, and then when you're done, you relaxed. That is not consistent. So that means your shots on target are not going to be consistent. You need to have the same grip pressure throughout. So keep that in mind when you're doing your dry fire practice. You want to maintain the same pressure throughout. That's going to be very important because then it's going to help translate good dry fire practice into live fire. Without that, once you start doing live fire, you might be all over the place. We will be talking about the very common question, how much pressure you should apply later on when we start adding support hand. But for now, just grip it firmly. You don't have to have a death grip. Just grip it firmly, but maintain that pressure throughout your practice and have good trigger control principles. So that wraps up today's video. As I mentioned, we're taking baby steps. There's a lot of details when it comes to the grip. So bear with me here because we're going to build on every detail little by little. Give these principles and the techniques a try. I would recommend, 3 dry fire sessions this week, maybe about 15 minutes. It's not hard, okay? Just getting used to high leverage. This is going to be simple for those of you with more experience, but it might be a different technique, which you can try. And maybe you never heard about this explained. I'm using principles, but this is something that we'll build on top of and it'll make a lot more sense. And it might even make you want to experiment with your grip. Anyway, I hope you guys liked the video. As always, if you like the video, please give us a thumbs up. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't subscribed yet. I'll see you guys in the next video.